Okay, so this next one, right? We're looking at nightlife. Nightlife, right? It's the new film from Matt Poitras. I think that's how you pronounce it. He directs. It's written by David W. Schade. Um, the film is produced by Matt and David. You know, cinematography is handled by again Matt Poitras. He's wearing a lot of hats here, as well as D. Davidson Darren. That might be Darren D. Davidson. I'm not quite sure, but that's how it's written. D. Davidson Darren on IMDb, as well as Aaron Arzip. Music was handled by Xander Rapstein, right? And his band, Poist, Poistering. Oh my god, what is it, the name of his freaking band? Oh my days. I have it floating around. Proud Peasant. That's it. That's the name of his freaking band. Proud Peasant. So yes, they take care of the music and our cast. Okay. Well, the people doing the interviews, right? We got Matt Poitras again. Yes, it is Darren D. Davidson and Caitlin Alcunda. And we hear from David W. Schade, George Appling, Jessica Van Richen, Rob Paul, Shelby Wimler, Taylor Main, Caitlin Alcunda, KD Kid, let's see if there's anyone else. Liam Moody, Sydney Fronick, Thomas Buckley, Silas Halls, Andrew Huffman, Sam Cooker, Hannah Johnson, Zane Baker, yeah, that's it, right? That's who we hear from. Now, it is a documentary which features interviews of knights, squires, and crew of a travelling joust company, new riders of the Golden Age. Manager and horseman David W. Schade leads the company with his 25 years of experience as a professional jouster. Here we witness the twilight of his career. This subculture piece was shot on location over 3 seasons at a Renaissance festival in Texas, Sherwood Forest Faire, featuring intense tournament sequences and visually captivating footage of horses with authentic knights in medieval armour atop massive draft horses. True sportsmanship is seen in this combat sport of ages past. This is a tale of full combat joust. So yeah, I mean, I had no clue that's what this was, right? I just knew I was being sent something called nightlife. You see a picture of a guy on a horse, right? But it just assumed it was a period piece. You know, so yeah, this was super interesting. Lisa Romanoff, right, who is the CEO and managing director of Vision Films, says, the Renaissance Fair community is loved by many, and this film provides a rare look at the highs and lows from someone who has dedicated his life to the art and sport of jousting. And David W. Schade says, I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my story and all that goes into the art form I've devoted my entire adult life to. Matt Poitras adds, I had a great team from the camera crew to the music featured that truly captured the excitement of full contact joust, as well as the uniqueness of Ren Fair culture. So yeah, that's it really. That's what this is. And it was, yeah, it was definitely interesting, right? Definitely, growing up, I love stories of Richard Lionheart, Robin Hood, right? All of that kind of thing. It sounded fun, right? I think as you study history, you learn, okay, maybe it's not as fun, right? It's a pretty harsh life, people dying of disease. Like, if you fall off your horse, that can kill, like, so many things. And going into battle, everything's flying, right? It's not like, okay, you and me, we're going one on. No. You could get knifed and, hit from any angle. So, it's not as simple. It's not as graceful, as elegant as you might, as a kid believe. But there's still that little thing, right? There's still that little fascination. Now, we do have Renaissance fairs, right? Reenactments and that kind of stuff in the UK. But I feel it's a bigger thing in the States, right? Because Sherwood Forest, like Robin Hood, all of that, that's English legend, right? It's English legend, it's folklore, but there is a history, there is a reality of those events happening to some degree, right? So in this, and they're talking about Sherwood Forest Fair in Nottingham, right? I was like, yo, so they travel all the way from the States to the UK to do this. That's impressive. Like, you know what I mean? Okay. Right? There must be, to be able to fly these people across, that's something. No. It's not in the UK. It Sherwood Forest in Texas. I didn't even know there was a Nottingham or Sherwood Forest in fucking America. That's crazy, but it makes a lot of sense, right? Makes it, as I said, because Ren Fair does seem to be a bigger thing, right? So we get a look at this to some degree in the jousting, right? Because this, as I said, this was talking to David, and we start off with him talking about how he gets into it, but towards the end, suddenly it's all like, yeah, and I'm probably, there's kind of retirement talk. And I don't know if when they were making this, it was, potentially him looking to retire, you know what I mean? Or if it was one of those things that just suddenly happened and you've caught a lot of it on camera, But we get him talking about how he got into it, the training people need and all of that. You know what I mean? Like I think he said he was jousting in 5 weeks, but usually people need a big chunk of time, at least a year of training. you know. So we do get that insight. And then we hear from some different people talking about how, you know, they got into it, why they got into it, right? Which is interesting. Now, David talks about, you know, the injuries, so do some of the others. And he's broken his finger. He's got a metal plate in his finger. And so it's, I think it's his little finger and it's bent like that, right? So he can't straighten it, but it's bent so he can pinch and grip, which, you know, makes sense. But he doesn't actually talk about how it broke. Like, what was the thing that broke the finger? Right? There's certain things that I felt it was a shame we didn't hear about, right? Because I think there are the injuries, but, right, you know, like, we're hearing a lot about, oh my God, I can't think of, I was going to say CBD. CBD? No, because that's a, you know, that's a good drug. You know, it's from head trauma, right? A lot of, you know, essentially back in the day, everyone thought it only came from boxing. CTE. Ugh, that's it. CTE. And because here's the thing, right? You can get CTE from like headering a football, right? And horse riding. Because it's the up and down motion, right? It's your head moving quicker than your brain being able to move. So with jousting, there is a lot of sharp movements, right? Your head getting cracked back. So is there, like, what's that risk? You know what I mean? We don't hear about that, right? I'm reading stories and looking at histories and people dying from fragments of the joust, right? Of the lance. So what's that risk like, right? One of the guys talks about having to make, you know, the lances. So what's that process? Do you use a special wood? A certain type of wood? You know, do you have to cure it in a certain way? It would have been interesting hearing about that. You know, with armor, how many times can you get hit before you have to throw that away? Right? Because the integrity goes from things after taking so much pounding, right? You know, you have to change parts on airplanes because of this, right? On cars, on so many different things. You Formula One, right? You have to change the parts because of wear and tear and damage. So is that the same with armor, right? What these are the things I really wish Matt had covered, because that's super interesting, right? It's definitely interesting hearing about from all of these different people and why they do it, the love for the game and all of that jazz. But these other things that come into it, like money. How the fuck do you earn money? Because they took, like, I forget who it was. Someone was like, yo, with this, you have to understand that and be happy with the fact of not earning a lot of money, right? Being uncomfortable for weeks on end, right? You know, which you like the honesty, the reality of things. But what is the money? You know, because I think at the Sherwood Forest, like one of the prizes was $1,000. So, is that it? You want to just ensure if you're winning a lot of tournaments, you can be okay. But if you're not winning, then what do you do? Do you have to get a second job? Like, because it sounds pretty intensive, all the training and everything that you have to do. So is there time for another job? Right? What is the gist? Is there sponsorship? Like, how does this work? Like, that would have been another interesting aspect to get. You know what I mean? So it was fascinating. Was fascinating because I think, there's the oh my god, what's that? Medieval times, right? Because I know they do jousting, but like knowing that there is this thing, right? This regular thing these people can do, right? For work and stuff. You're like, oh, I didn't know about that. One guy got into it because to help with his stunt work, which makes a lot of sense, right? Falling off a horse, you got to do that in some films and stuff. So, learning all of that and, being able to work on medieval features and stuff, I imagine that comes from this too. So, that aspect, interesting. There's a lot of interesting things, but it does feel like there's information left on the table, Like, there does seem to be a lot of honesty in everyone that, is interviewed, which is great. But in between the interviews, a lot of times they show kind of footage. They play music and they show footage of people jousting. That does get repetitive, right? We do get a lot of the same footage reused throughout. And you kind of feel we could cut most of these little indents out because it's not really, because, it's just a lot of passes. We're seeing, passes, people getting hit, sometimes someone coming off, like a lance breaking. Like, but once you've seen it, cool. But we don't need to see it, 10 or so times. And again, being that same footage, the same footage of people in the crowd, and like, yeah, a little girl waving a flag. Like, we it's just being repurposed too much. So, yeah, that could have been cut out. Right? Now, we do talk to a few women, like one who actually jousts, right? A young lady who's like the tour manager, and she said she jousted once, right? No, there's two women that joust. Yeah, we actually talked to two women joust and a trans woman that jousts. But what we don't really know is, how does that work, right? Now, it did sound from one of the women, it sounded like, they do joust the men. But are there a lot of women on the circuit? And like there was a guy, I think it was Robert or Richard, or that might have been his stage name. But he talked about getting concussed. It's that dude, right? Now, he said because he's a lighter guy, he does come off the horse a lot, right? So, obviously, for the most part, women are smaller and lighter than guys. For the most part, obviously, there are different sizes of people and all of this, but, bone density, all of that. Men, bigger. So, a woman jousting a man, not necessarily fair, right? Not necessarily fair, or the chances of the woman winning, are less, right? And it is a skill. So if you touch someone in the right place, that could obviously knock them off. But a lot of the times it's placement and it's the weight behind the hit, right? So yeah, what are the logistics between women jousting and men jousting? It would have been very interesting to hear that, and how many women actually do joust, other than working in the other areas of it all, right? And the armor, because when we see this, right, in films and other things, and when we read about it in the history book, people had shields. Now in this, they don't have shields, but they did kind of put this thing on the armor. Now, is that authentic, or is that something created so you don't have to hold a shield? Right? I would have wanted to hear about that. Right? How realistic is the armor? And realistic, I should say, how authentic is the armor? Right? Is this exactly what knights would wear? Or what changes have you done to mitigate injury? These are things that I really wish they would have gone into. But saying that, it is interesting, because this is a world as I said, I knew nothing about. So yeah, if you are a fan of history, right, knights and all of that, then I think this is something that you probably want to take a look at. You know what I mean? So it is Vision are putting it out on I think the 18th, right? So it will be out now. I've got links, I think, at least to Apple, where you can watch it, but it's on all VODs. So yeah, if this sounds like it might be for you, people, go check out Night Life. And that's night spelt with a K, obviously. Enjoy.